Monday, March 23rd, 2026 at noon, and we are here for a joint workshop between the Coeur d'Alene City Council and Ignite CDA. So I would start by calling the meeting to order and asking the clerk to do a roll call, please.
English.
Here.
Scheckler.
Here.
Wood.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Gabriel.
Thank you. I'd also like to note that our two representatives on Ignite will be serving as city council people for the purposes of this meeting. Thank you.
And if Mr. Osborne would please call roll for Ignite.
Evans.
Here.
Jester. Here. Garcia.
Here.
Mendel.
Here.
Metz.
Here.
And Chairman Hoskins.
Here.
And Kiki Miller. Again, I apologize if I'm duplicating, but.
Thank you. So,
I apologize for Chris not being here. He just called in and said he was driving into town and his vehicle broke down, so.
well, that's horrible.
Shoot.
Well, hope that gets resolved. And so we're ready to start. We have a presentation, but before we start with a presentation, Christy needs to be gone in a little bit for an appointment. And so I was hoping that she could ask her questions now so that that gets taken care of, if you want to go ahead and do that.
Well, just one, and I believe it was answered. I managed to track down Scott and Katie. I had a question in the back about the very last page, had a statement, and I believe that this is Katie's statement, not Ignite's statement. That's what was clarified to me. You will see at the bottom on, it says, well, no page on, sorry. It says.
Second to last page.
Second to last page. It says loan to Coeur d'Alene wastewater treatment is,
You guys don't have a copy of that?
No, we don't, but
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
I'll read it out loud, is not stated on Ignite's financial statements as it's not considered an official debt for Ignite as an entity. The city calculates the loan repayment as being covered by the one-time payment at the close of the district. And so my question to Katie, and she clarified, I said that wasn't exactly our agreement. We have a pro forma, and Ignite's been making payments through tax increment, both for their debt and the debt the city took out against the wastewater treatment plant, almost to the point of $4 million now. And so if you read this, though, it looks like we would wait to be paid, and at the close of the district, the city would need to pay 5.726 in dollars to the wastewater treatment plant. And I imagine the future council, going, how are we going to do that? So from what I understand, talking to Katie, and it's kind of long-winded what I'm getting to, this is if we close this district today, this would be the debt obligation that council still has to pay back for the wastewater treatment plant. But the payments are ongoing. My question is, I think it would be really good for council just to have a copy of that pro forma that was originally agreed upon, even though Ignite isn't considering it in part of their debt. It'd be good just to have it. I know Danielle has it. I know Tony had it. Troy had it.
Councilmember Wood, I sent the agreement that we signed in 2020 with the city. It's not like a pro forma for payment. It's just a source. It's really just a sources and uses for the new project, the Atlas project. But I shared that with Renata, so she can share that with you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just wanted to make sure that we're still on track of receiving yearly payments through the tax increment.
It's not yearly payments.
Oh,
It's per district as funds become available.
okay, thank you.
So the River District and the Lake District have fully paid off their obligations. It's just the Atlas District that has intent to repay the city, which is all that the agreement says there is.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions you had before?
No, I appreciate that. I didn't want to miss that opportunity, but now I'll listen quietly to your presentation.
Okay. For the presentation, I did want to mention that Ron Jacobson is headed to the airport. That's why he's not here. So Katie will be answering any of the financial questions you guys may have. Please, Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And this is a workshop, so feel free to speak up whenever.
I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and Ignite board members for providing this opportunity to discuss the Urban Renewal Agency, and the partnership with the city, as well as the respective districts. For those of you that I've not met, my name is Will Osborne. I moved here from Montana in 2014. I graduated with a degree in finance and spent 30 years in the construction business, most of it in finance and operations. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to serve the citizens of Coeur d'Alene as the Executive Director of Ignite CDA and continue the excellent work that has been achieved through the cooperation and effort of the agency and the partnership with the city. These accomplishments are outstanding on a national level, and a truly shining example of what can be accomplished by leveraging urban renewal as a tool to bridge private and public development. I would also like to recognize and thank our Ignite board for the time and effort they put forth to this effort on a voluntary basis. Just quickly, I wanted to review the vision and the mission statements for Ignite. We strive to be a catalyst for positive change and the creation of an exemplary 21st century city, a city in which economic prosperity, quality housing, and employment opportunities are available to all. Our mission is to bring together resources to achieve Coeur d'Alene's vision of a diverse, sustainable community with healthy neighborhoods, a vibrant central city, a strong regional economy, sustainable, superior public open spaces, and again, quality jobs and housing for all. I'll go through this fairly quickly. I think the focus of today is going to be primarily on the Atlas District because there is so much activity in that and so much history. So, in a nutshell, and again, I'm sure most everybody in this room understands this, but I just want to review some basics as a platform for today's discussion. But urban renewal does not raise taxes. It uses existing taxes, and which continue to fund cities, schools, and counties. New property tax value based on the growth and the tax increment is used temporarily for the purposes of the urban renewal.
So I want to mention that while it's true that urban renewal does not raise taxes, urban renewal does affect the levy rate.
Which has typically gone downward because of growth, right?
And the new property value growth in the urban renewal district is temporarily redirected, but because of changes with House Bill 389, we do not collect 100% of that.
Right, 80%.
Thank you for that.
And also just, you mentioned that I think one of the districts that spend the most time for me, and I was kind of a catalyst in getting this going. For me, the biggest thing I want to hear about is the hospital district, health district, and why we should keep it going if we should, or should we alter, and so just so you know, that's
Absolutely, yeah, I appreciate that.
first one on my mind. So,
Councilman
and I
English,
think
thank
a
you,
couple of
and
us-
I will address that as well.
Okay, thanks.
One of the key components, of course, is the ability to leverage future tax increment by borrowing money and using that capital to engage in economic growth. This is going to come up in the discussion of the River District, and I think it's important that we understand some basics of the borrowing tools that we have at our disposals, the OPAs and the IRAs, which are owner participation agreements and improvement reimbursement agreements. And those are tools that the agency can use to borrow money that put 100% of the risk on the developer. If the tax increment doesn't pay the funds back, we're not obligated to pay it back. And you'll see a working example of that in the River District. This is just a visualization of what we've already talked about. The baseline property value of the taxes stays the same. The increment is used by the agency, and when the agency is closed, the full amount of the tax district that has grown over time goes back. And to your point, Mayor, there may be a caveat with that due to new legislation. So in the River District, just a quick overview, 363 acres when created, 56 acres were de-annexed, which put that amount back into the tax rolls. The district sunsets under its natural time frame on September 30th, 2027. Mr. Jacobson had done an analysis, I believe, but I just wanted to explain this a little bit further. So right now we have one OPA, which is a debt instrument, and 3 IRAs, which are also debt instruments. And these were contracts that were put into place with some of the people that were involved in the development of this district. Currently, there's about $3.6 million outstanding. If the River District were to be closed today, we would owe that in full. The key language to consider is that payments will continue in full until paid or until the sunsetting of the district plus 1 year. So whatever's due on August 1st, 2028 is not owed to the investors.
So, Will, do you mind if I ask if your acronyms, if you could just explain?
OPA is Owner Participation Agreement,
Okay,
and IRA is an Improvement Reimbursement Agreement.
okay, thank you.
And again, those are debt instruments that the agency uses, and generally it's a developer that's involved that puts up the funds.
And so the developer, investor, it's kind of a gamble for them. They may or may not get the tax increment back.
Correct.
Okay,
Zero risk to the taxpayer.
right.
And that's the language in the agreement that states that. Basically saying that it's conditional upon the receiving of tax increment, which is also why those items are not reflected in our financials. So following that example all the way through, this is the payment schedule until the natural close of the district, of the River District, and this is just on the OPA, the one obligation. So at the end of it, there'll still be $2 million that we will not have to pay, thus representing a savings to the taxpayers. In all of those OPA and IRA debt obligations together equal about $2.5 million. And again, that was reflected in the letter from Mr. Jacobson.
Could I follow up on that last? I thought it was maybe going to be next. I'm sorry, I said I'd be quiet.
No, you're fine.
That 2 million at the end, so that would be dispersed to the taxing entities.
That is debt that we would not pay.
Oh,
So it would
there's
depend
no
on,
leftover.
the balance of the whole district as to what would be reallocated.
Okay, gotcha, thank you.
So the Health Corridor District, just a quick reminder, this is I-90, this is 95, this is Government Way, and the district does cross over I-90 in that area. There was some talk at one point, I believe, about some direct overpass access to the district from the north side to the south side. The Health Corridor District is very unique in that the largest property owner is Kootenai Health, and Kootenai Health does not pay property tax. So it's a little bit of a unique situation, and how we approach that presents some challenges and some opportunities. The only way that this district's going to work is that if Kootenai Health agrees, as they did at the onset, to participate in a pilot, which is payment in lieu of taxes. That would be a very good thing for the district. That would be a very good thing for the city. That could bring in a lot of money that we otherwise would not have the opportunity to to gain, because they are not held responsible to pay property taxes at this point. This is a vehicle that would give us an opportunity to benefit from their participation. The district has been largely inactive, to your point, Councilman English, due to the fact that Kootenai Health's budget has not been very healthy. A lot of this was caused by COVID, and to date, they have not made pilot payments. If you recall, I think one of the largest things that affected their expenses were the traveling nurses and the increase in labor that they had to have. The traveling nurses represented an increase of 30% in labor costs over resident nurses. And there were just a domino effect of things that put them in a situation where it was not feasible for them to make these payments up to this point. There was also turnover in all of the executives and a significant loss of institutional knowledge about the program that they agreed to participate in. So I did meet with the new leadership of Kootenai Health, and there is interest. They have identified the Coeur d'Alene campus as their primary campus going forward. Obviously, they're doing some significant improvements and investments in the Post Falls area, but their plan is that the outlying areas will be used primarily for primary care, and the trauma care and procedural care will remain in the Coeur d'Alene campus. And they do anticipate the Coeur d'Alene campus being the largest of their assets going forward. They have put into motion a formal assessment of their current campus and what its potential represents and the community needs, and that is reportedly going to start in the next 30 days. And that's something that they're doing on their own, independent of us. We do feel pretty strongly that the Health Corridor District represents the greatest potential for job creation of all the districts that we've been involved in, just because of the association with Kootenai Health and the fact that they are our largest employer in the county.
Do you have any data that states whether that job creation would happen with or without your participation?
I do not, but I would be happy to look into that. Kootenai Health has a working example of a successful project in motion utilizing the Post Falls Urban Renewal Agency, and they have estimated a job creation of 1,000 plus, including voluntary adoption of taxable status to facilitate utilization of urban renewal. And I did inquire about their data source on that number, and the only thing I've gotten thus far is that it was an internal study performed by the hospital administrators. But I can look into that more.
Is there any data, economically speaking, and I don't know this, but do health jobs grow the economy, or is it a wash?
I
It's about a
would say I think grows it, but
1.59 multiplier, jobs multiplier, so it's not like manufacturing, which is like a 2.5, but it still is not like a service, I mean, it's service-based, but not like a restaurant.
It's higher than education then?
I would say they're about the same,
What about just general government jobs?
a little bit lower.
Thanks.
And I would just go back to, I'm glad it looks like, we'll be able to hopefully be at some decision points pretty quickly, that's still, I've admitted before, and I will again, that, the fault, and I take some responsibility at the beginning, we just relied on kind of a handshake agreement instead of a formal agreement for the PILT and payment in lieu of taxes. And, on one hand, they say, well, gee, with COVID and all of that, couldn't have sustained, but it's a matter of, well, if you have the contractual agreement, then that would be a priority. So I guess I'm still going to need some convincing that it's a net positive. I've got an open mind to it, but yeah, we're at a real decision time for that, so.
I would agree with you. And, you know, the fact that we're already 5 years into the life of the district, if we are going to get anything done meaningfully, we need to do it.
Yeah, and maybe you've got the slide coming up, but like with the past one, like if it, went out of business tomorrow, if we cut it or something, is there any positive balance that we would have at this point? Are we still in the hole or what?
Dan, that data's coming up.
Okay.
It's part of the
Great.
presentation.
I had a question about the voluntary taxes.
Yeah, I kind of skipped over that part.
What incentive aligns them to do that rather than just make the investment on their own?
So they chose, and these next couple of slides are just some real quick bullet points that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. This was the presentation that the hospital gave to Post Falls in their request for urban renewal funding. They chose to be a taxable entity in that scenario, and in our scenario, I believe because the agency is already in place, or excuse me, the district is already in place, they can just do the pilot. They don't have to go through and change. I mean, they changed their status from nonprofit to taxable voluntarily in order to participate in the program in Post Falls. They don't have to do that for ours. The mechanism's already in place. So I think that's the difference, but that's probably
The
something.
reason they do that is they're going to get over $9 million of infrastructure built for the smaller amount of taxes.
Right. Which they could do the same thing with pilot.
Pilot payout is roughly represents what you would pay in property taxes anyway, so.
That's how it's calculated, is the same way.
Yeah, no, this isn't us, this is Post Falls, but it just seems kind of odd to use urban renewal as a tool where the funding mechanism is a tax increment, but yet this property will never generate any property taxes. So,
But it will for Post Falls because they've changed their status, I believe.
What, 28?
change their status so they're no longer nonprofit?
Correct.
So this is a for-profit?
Chose to pay taxes.
Or just that
Or
piece?
they voluntarily?
Volunteering to pay taxes. Pilot.
So they're doing it here, but not here.
And that's for a duration of 25 years, you said?
Whatever the time span of the district. Districts are all set with a specified time frame. And I think maximum is 20? 20. And that's what our district is 20.
After the district expires, would their status just go back to not paying taxes then?
Right.
So there wouldn't be that benefit at the end of the district like there is in a different type of district?
You wouldn't have the taxes, no, but you would have a hospital and 1,000 jobs and.
Well, it facilitates other, if we do a bunch of infrastructure work in that
Indirect, yeah.
district, it facilitates taxable growth, tax-based growth also in that area, right? Like a big constricting issue in the hospital district is the transportation. That road system, if you ever drive it, is a real problem and it's impeding development. So if we could get in there and use these pilot and, use the tool of the pilot to fix that issue, we could really grow the taxable properties in that area too, and encourage development that does grow the tax base.
Private medical offices, labs, that could, yeah.
There's a lot of very
Yeah.
limited use properties up there, little doctor's office that's been there since the 80s that isn't developing into anything else because the traffic pattern doesn't support it.
Right.
Thank you. In the Post Falls case, then there'll be lots of housing and other medical office buildings and stuff then that will be adjacent to the hospital.
And the infrastructure is helping support those, which otherwise could not go in there because they don't have the
Fewer
infrastructure.
curbs, streets, sidewalks.
Yeah, wow.
So again, just an example of the commitment level that the hospital has. Their awareness level of urban renewal has definitely gone up. The new administration when we met with them, you know, I definitely felt that there was a strong interest, and we have work to do to educate them and get them up to speed. And to your point, Dan, Mr. Councilman English, I believe that time is of the essence.
So how does home construction drive long-term employment?
Got to have a place to live, to work.
No, I'm talking about all long-term employment. I did not know that construction as an industry was long-term employment.
It's typically the other way around.
I understand.
What'd you say, typically what?
It's typically the other way around, but yeah.
Yeah, employment drives home construction.
It's just a nuance.
Well, if that's one of their arguments, then it's a weak nuance.
Yeah. I don't know if that's what they actually.
So unless there are any specific questions related to river or health corridor, we're going to move on to Atlas, and I'm going to ask Mr. Phil Boyd to come up with Welsh Comer.
I'd like to just, for a second, go back to the Post Falls one. On that $9 million agreement for the hospital, they'll create a, I'm not sure if it's a owner participation agreement or an improvement agreement. They're agreeing to pay that back. If that doesn't grow, or they just build all the streets and the hospital doesn't show up and those other businesses don't show up, they don't have, that money doesn't have to be paid back. So there's no risk to the taxpayers that are without that, in that area. So that development has to happen to grow so the hospital gets paid back.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Watch out, that's.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay, thanks, Will. Council members, commissioners, Mayor Gookin, Chairman Hoskins, thank you for the opportunity. Chairman Hoskins and Will asked me to go through a little history of how the Atlas project moved along, some of the development management things that Ignite has done to nurture it along in association with the city. And so I had this walk down memory lane to get the site to where it is here. This started in 2017. Many of you were here at the time. And one of the things that struck me going down memory lane is the elements of risk that the city took on and Ignite took on, maybe Ignite a little less, but the leadership that was employed by the city, the creativity to pull the waterfront out and reserve it for the city. There's some really significant things that the city and Ignite did here to create what we see today. Looking back on it, would some of us decide to change things that happened? Probably. But there's a lot of positive things that have happened here. So there's, I think, a lot to be proud of. Certainly, as I was going back through it, I've forgotten so many things. Maybe that's due to my age. But when I look back on it, I'm like, wow, there were some really great things that happened. Giving you a few metrics, this is where we think we're going to end up. The project will end up 523 dwelling units. The multifamily is primarily over here in these two developments. There's a little bit of multifamily anticipated in this area we call 5A. That is one of the parcels that Ignite has not sold yet. And they're pacing themselves to see what happens to the interest rates and some higher demand for that type. Quite a bit of townhomes that have happened, twin homes. For definitions, a twin home is like a duplex, except you own each half of it. And then there's 82 single-family homes. How that compares, interestingly, to what was master planned in 2018. We actually ended up with a higher density than we had originally anticipated. A big chunk of that is in multifamily. And for those of us that were involved at the time, you might remember that multifamily was really discouraged at the time because there was so much multifamily happening on Celtice Way that we wanted to see put a development together that minimized multifamily. The challenge in RFP 1 was the desire to generate revenue. And so when these two proposals came in, they were pretty good proposals. And they were multifamily. There was commercial vision that we had up here, but the multifamily carried the day because they had a higher offer price for the dirt. And so that was one of the things, back to Councilmember Wood's discussion about when are we going to get the revenue back? And she was involved in the RFPs from the beginning, and that was a message that we heard particularly from Troy Tymason at the time. And those of us involved in the RFP committee, that was Troy's vote at all times, highest residual land value. So a little bit of statistics there.
One question, because I know that there were, originally we had planned more commercial.
Yep.
Can you kind of talk a little bit to that difference?
Sure. Yep. Commissioner Retz is correct. So there was commercial that was planned up in here. We actually received a proposal on it, but it was, 50% of what the multifamily was. We also had commercial planned here, a corner of it up in here, and you can see these red pieces down here, which are the actual commercial. There's also a little piece of commercial there, the DOMA. But
So this is not the current plan, this is what was proposed, right?
this is the current plan. This is, yeah, it is. The one you guys have not seen before is this piece here. The Atlas Phase 3 is the piece you haven't.
Right.
Yes, the Mount Heat, yep.
Hey, Phil, just to tag on to one of your statements, the reason why we wanted the highest dollar amount for the dirt is pretty critical, because sometimes people look at this as, there's a lot of expensive homes here. But that waterfront piece, that was a $9 million expense to the city, I think at least as much to Ignite, and we had to be able to pay for it and to protect that for future use for, generations, so that it's public land. But we couldn't pay for it unless we charged the highest amount for the dirt. When I say we, I mean you.
And you've given me the perfect segue. That was a key element when the site was being master planned, is the steering committee, and I'll show you who that steering committee consisted of here in a sec, and the public in general said, we really want to preserve the waterfront. And that was a primary objective, in addition to stimulating private development. A lot of us forget, and I had forgotten, that this site sat vacant for like 11 years. And so Councilmember Wood is correct that that was one of the primary objectives, was to be able to fund redevelopment of the site. The real estate market, also a refresher, in 2017 was radically different than it is today. And so when we think back at that time, a lot of us, me in particular, and our consultants, because we were wringing our hands when we were working on the financial feasibility analysis. And a couple of other, we've talked about this challenge. The purchase price was very high. It was $7.85 million. This element right here, the soil conditions, not contaminated, but unconsolidated, uncompacted soils and topography, are one of the things that held up private development for that time period, because it was just so expensive, so much upfront cost and a difficult carry. And then it used to be where the log chain was, and this stuff in the foreground is John and Ann Butler's. This stuff in the foreground is John and Ann Butler's project here. These are single family, these are twin homes. Pepper Smock's project up here. A lot of local developers, builders are involved with the project. This is Toll Brothers, which they're a nationwide company. This is another part of the project that's John and Ann Butler's here. These are twin homes, and there's a little triple right there. Dennis Cunningham's project here, Active West, which is a positive thing as well to reflect on, is the developers, other than Toll Brothers and to Chase Mixis, were all local. And that was maybe it's a marketing thing. We really communicated with local developers, helped them get spun up and educated to try to keep the money local to the extent we could. A couple more pictures. Whoops. And then this is as Councilmember Wood pointed out, the wonderful waterfront park. This was taken in January. Notice there's no snow on the ground. But see how low the water is, which gives you a good shot of the waterfront accesses. Here, the parking lot, the picnic area here, and the playground. This is obviously a summer picture when you can see the summer pool is up, accessible launch here. If you have mobility issues, you can get into the water here. It's a protected swim area. We were able to restore the log booms, which is a unique thing to be able to do with the Idaho Department of Lands. But because it was an old mill site and it had log booms, we were able to do that, which is a really neat feature, because you can be in here and be in a protected swim area. And then this is looking to the east, and you can see the trail here, the waterfront trail, picnic areas, and then the wonderful dog park. which is also an accessible dog park. If you're in a wheelchair, you can get down to the water with your dog. I'm going to get a little bit into the development part of it. I mentioned the big history part here. In 2005, the mill closed after 100 years or so. This is that period of time when it just sat there and vacant, and I think certainly city folks, Hillary Patterson, Mike Ridley, if he were here, would talk about the number of private developers that came in trying to get the site, make the site work. The council members might remember that the city acquired the railroad corridor through there. So it bisected the site, which created some issues with developers, but also just the condition of the site created issues. 2018, you acquired the site, reassembled everything. There was this remediation process that we went through, the earthwork, and then the waterfront park, and the RFPs that have brought it to this point, and now the Ignite's looking at attainable housing project on the phase 3, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. This is a detailed timeline that I won't bore you with too much except some high points. This was a real critical point in time right here, September 12th and 13th. Ignite and the city had been looking at master planning the site, doing due diligence. I shouldn't say master planning, they were doing due diligence on it. And Ignite got to September 12th, had a board meeting, and Phil Cushlan, who many of you may know, Cushlan and Associates, he's a well-known urban renewal advisor in the state of Idaho. He was assisting them, and he told the board, look, this is just too dicey at this point. We recommend you get more time with the due diligence. Well, the city had a purchase and sale agreement, a PSA with the seller, and the time was running out, and the city had to make this decision right here on the 13th. And so at that point, they voted to purchase it. And so there the site was. The city then turned and looked at Ignite and said, gosh, we still want you to keep moving forward, which Ignite did. Continued with master planning the site, got an approved master plan internally. I don't want to say outside approvals, but internal approvals, and moved forward with that. There was an update as the market was changing. We continued to update the plan, and then, had some city council meeting here with a triangle parcel acquisition, and if many of you might remember that, it was a challenging negotiation. Danielle was probably involved with that. Mike Ridley was. I probably lost quite a bit of hair over that deal with the adjoining property owner, where the city swapped the triangle piece for some railroad right-of-way where River's Edge currently is. Fortunately, you're getting that waterfront access. And then about this time, the real estate market had been really strong, and the revenues were such that there was some idea of maybe we should think about moving Mount Hink instead of just keeping it a non-tax generating entity. And so that idea started about that time. We had a meeting with the city council about it, continued to move forward with looking at some attainable housing options here in 22, and then had a workshop last year, or 2 years ago in 24. So there's been a partnership that the city has had with Ignite, and here's some of the folks in the different committees that have been involved. But it's been, at least in my experience, a really positive thing working with both the city and Ignite to the benefit of the public, because development doesn't always do that. And I think the waterfront park is a key indicator of what's happened here as a positive thing. Master plan part of it, this again is just a little bit of history. Wisely, when the city acquired this project, the property, they said, gosh, we want the community involved. Ignite wanted the community involved. So we did this massive community engagement, not just talking about the park space, but it was also talking about the public space. And part of that was strategic to say to the public, look, we want to take out this 12 acres and put it in the waterfront, but in order to do that, we're going to have to get pretty darn dense and cramming houses in there in order to create this waterfront park. And we actually polled people on that, and the response was surprising. They were willing to accept higher density in order to have that waterfront park, which they also had a say in looking at the different amenities. What kind of things do you want there? Overwhelmingly, spaces like we have in other city parks. We want it natural, and we want access to the water, not just beaches, but other ways to get to the water. And they wanted a dog park right there. And they got the dog park. this is just a couple of slides I threw in here to show this is the early version. This might be what Mayor Gookin you're thinking about here, where up on Mount Hink, it was just, we were trying to figure out what to do with it, and at the time it was recreational space. You can see there's quite a bit of single family here. Here's the commercial in red that I was referring to. This one, the pond here next to the river, that obviously went away because of environmental consequences, but it was a great vision. And then this is another, this was the updated master plan, and you can see we were able to push a little bit into Mount Hink here because we thought there was an opportunity that there were structural soils in that area. Any questions before I move into land disposition about master planning? Okay, moving on. The land disposition process, the reason I wanted to, and Scott had asked me to talk about this, is because it is unique to URAs or urban renewal agencies, that the way that a land disposition works is you put out an RFP, you create scoring criteria, which can include price, but you don't always have to take the highest price. And so to date, we put out 11 RFPs, as I mentioned earlier, 4 local developers. Here was our team that did the evaluations, 3 city, 3 Ignite, and very objective analysis. This is the scoring matrix example, where each member of the team goes through and scores these independently, so not together, they score them independently. Then we get together and talk through the scoring. Price is one of the components, and it's a equation, so you don't get to debate price. You're either high or you're low. So this person got 75 points, so they're the high person. This person was the lower score on that. But one of the things that's interesting, if you were a developer, a private developer, you would probably say, I just want this, just give me my money and I'm out the door. As a taxing entity, you have a tax increment to think about. So we do these other elaborate calculations that consider how fast the developer will move in building product and the value of the product that that developer will build, because sometimes the TIF makes a meaningful difference. And so there's all these detailed financial analysis that go into the decision-making process.
You don't really want us to read all that.
No, sir. Yeah, I was just showing you the content. If you'd like me to send it to you for your afternoon reading, I certainly can do that. I think it's just, I think Scott just wanted me to make sure that I was explaining the level of effort that goes into, and that the committee put into this. And Councilmember Wood, who had to leave, was part of that, as well as, go ahead, Brennan.
I was just say, do you want to make any comments on some of the challenges with the intended commercial areas and getting bids for those, getting competitive bids for that? Because I think that kind of plays into a little bit of the financial analysis as well as just the intent for the land use.
Yeah, that was my point too, because I think it kind of altered how the vision of the project kind of went too.
It really did, and one of the challenges, just broadly speaking, commercial office is soft. If any of you are in that space, that is a soft space. Retail is soft, and so it's difficult to get meaningful residual land value out of that, sale prices. And then on top of it, it's tough for commercial to precede rooftops. And the rooftops in these 2 early ones, which we had hoped might be commercial, weren't here. Now there's rooftops. DOMA was a contingent on these, was one of the requirements for this person to be able to build multifamily here. They were required to create a commercial space there. I shouldn't say they were required to have DOMA, they were required to have a commercial space. The same thing down here in Area 13. They're required to have a commercial space because we know ultimately that will be a desirable use in this neighborhood and will bring people to ride their bike here, pull up, have a beer, eat dinner, whichever, same thing, come here and have a coffee. So I don't know, Commissioner Metz and Mandel, if I'm hitting your points, you might have additional insights.
The market wasn't really allowing it. The developers were saying, can't do it.
Yeah.
Not confident in being able to fill it, and it was on the heels of COVID, so the rebound for office space was questionable, but I think just even the retail. So we tried several times and just did not get back compelling offers.
We've done some modifications to Area 13 with a right-of-way and making it go off a little bit more into the park. What is the status of that right now? Is it still working toward a development, or?
Daniel,
Did
do
they
you know
back out?
the deadline, I can't remember the milestones off the top of my head. I want to say they have to be under construction this fall, Mayor. So their buildings have to be under construction this fall.
Okay, so it's still going forward?
Yes, yep,
Okay,
yep.
all right.
And just a quick thing on that. Once the property is sold to a developer, there's a schedule through a disposition and development agreement that they have to agree to certain milestones. I don't know how far we want to get into this, but when a developer misses a milestone, Ignite recaptures the tax increment that they would have paid had they satisfied their milestones.
There's a stick.
Yes, there is a stick, and Danielle's deployed it. Maybe I should say the board has deployed it. Danielle wrote it, and the board deployed it.
Well, I hope that moves forward.
Yes, it's, as far as we can tell, it's continuing to move forward. Can I move on? Atlas Phase 3, unless there's any other questions? Okay, I'm going to get into Atlas Phase 3. Again, some of you have seen this picture before. Celtice Way is on the left here. Down here is the park. This is what the site used to look like. The short story here is what we understand from history is this was a rock pit that was mined in order to help build the interstate. And so the mill was still here. It was operating. So with a gigantic hole in the ground, what better use of that than to fill it with bark and soil? So they did that, but it was a log yard then, so it was a relatively flat site. When Marshall Chesron acquired the site, there was a bunch of unsuitable material down here. So in kind of maybe short-sighted deal, they mined the material from here to get structural waterfront so they could turn that into housing, blocking off the community in general, and they piled all that unsuitable material here. And so that's how Mount Hink came to be. Mayor, go ahead,
What was
Scott.
the deepest point of Mount Hink?
It was about, we're probably 15 feet above the deepest point in this picture. So it was about 40 feet below the trail when we were mining. This is as we're filling it back up. Mayor Widmeyer, who was deeply involved with the project, because he was the mayor one. He was also on the Ignite board, so he was very involved with the project. And he calls me one day, and he's driving down Ramsey Road, and he says, "Phil, I'm looking over this gigantic ITD pit. Why can't we take and move Mount Hink from here into that pit?" And I said, "Well, Mayor, you certainly could do that, but one, you'd have to get ITD's permission, and two, you need to have a fair amount of money to do that." And he said, "Well, we'll move forward down that path. You just go get ITD's permission, like it's no big deal to get ITD to allow you to do something." But he had a second play vision for this site, and to get your bearings, here's the Croc Center. This is Ramsey Road. Golf course is right here. And there's the big pit. And so the idea was to fill that in to create perhaps an opportunity for some sports field and additional parking for the Croc Center and the sports field. So as you can imagine, the baseball field was the most important thing. And then there's a multi-use deal here. So this was a potential vision that we had developed if we were able to successfully fill the site, but that's another story to be told. But that is how the Mount Hink went from being a hole in the ground to this, which what you see here is primarily, this is all structural soils except this piece right here where we had nowhere to take it. We exhausted all of our locations. We didn't want to pay to haul it off. And Hillary Patterson had planted a seed early in the project design about, gosh, it would be really neat if we could figure out how to do a cottage court home somewhere. And I had that in the back of my mind, and so, well, if this is going to be unsuitable, non-buildable, maybe we should turn it into a park and make it a cottage court. And so that's how this little park came to be, partly out of necessity, partly out of a great way to create a neat, livable space here. So this is what the current concept is for the site. There's a mixture of product type here. These are townhomes because they're cost effective. These are twin homes, more townhomes here, single family, and a cottage, which are a smaller styled home fronting a green area in this area. One public road through here, and then the rest of these are tracks that they would be privately maintained. And then this park area here where these units would sit on. I'm going to show you some renderings of this. Don't think that they're real because they really look real. So this is yeah, so you can see, here's what that might look like. For orientation, Celtice Way, Heartwood here, John Butler's products there. And you can see the Riverstone Apartments in the background. This is it. This is Councilmember Miller's favorite shot of it, the wintertime shot, which it does look real. Yeah, everybody's there. That's right.
Yeah, the lights are on.
Yeah, the lights are on. This is a close-in shot of it. You can see the park area there, the townhomes, cottage homes, single-family homes there.
So it's that so on the right there, so that's like an alley between them?
This is a private alley here, so these are rear-loaded homes.
Okay.
Yep. And this is the public street, and another alley over here. This site's a challenge for a whole bunch of reasons that I won't bore you with unless you really want me to. But they have to do with topography and just the things layout and whatnot. But this was we did a number of configurations on it, and this was the layout that the committee finally landed on. Here's a couple of renderings of the park space. Another one at night, the one in winter, which our team member pointed out that the parents are in coats and the kids are not in coats.
It's realistic.
It's accurate.
Pretty typical.
That's accurate.
So a little bit about attainable housing. Again, Will and Scott wanted me to just address this, that this just didn't happen overnight. The board started thinking about it in 2022. We talked with the city council about it in 24. The board continued to talk about it when Councilmember Miller became Commissioner Miller. There was an additional set of brain power, I'll say, and knowledge base that came on, and at that point, the Ignite board said, we really want to dig into this, because if we're going to make this kind of decision, we want to be smart about it. We want to go out and talk to people. We want to engage stakeholders. We want to talk about potential builders, potential nonprofits who might work on the perpetual affordability, and particularly we want to talk to our neighbors, because we don't want to do anything in Phase 3 that would diminish what our neighbors have done. John Butler, Pepper Smock, that what they've built there, Dennis Cunningham. So we interviewed all of those guys, showed them these scenarios. We also want to study community demand. And so this is the committee that has worked on this up to this point. Hillary obviously adds continuity. Councilmember Miller has a bunch of housing expertise, and both Commissioner Jester and Meyer have development and architectural expertise that they've brought to bear on the project.
Wasn't Troy Patterson also on the committee?
Troy was, but you're right. Thank you, Danielle. Troy was on the committee. I guess I forgot him already.
He retired.
Don't tell Troy I said that, because I know he's unforgettable. It's recorded. A nasty phone call from him. Just without getting too deep into it, unless we want to, the board really wanted to boil down, what are we trying to accomplish here? And one of the things that has come out of it is that the understanding that housing and job creation are linked. And we can discuss that if you want. We also know that there's a market demand for attainable housing. We also know that there's a unique opportunity here, because how rare is it for a public entity to have 9 acres that they can potentially put into attainable housing? The board is also acutely aware that they've got a very nice neighborhood, and they don't want to do anything to negatively impact that very nice neighborhood. And so understanding that it has to be well-designed, it's going to add value to the neighborhood, the community at large, and then also continuing on with the partnership with the city, which is hence why there's members of the council and the city staff that are in the middle of this.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything on our end from like zoning or a PUD that would allow better or more effective use of that we could be involved in for that 9 acres?
So you mean like a different type of land use, or?
Is there any need for any changes that could create more value in obtaining that attainable housing? In either zoning or a PUD or?
What the PUD would, so there's currently a PUD over it. We may go back in for another PUD amendment for a deviation from things like setbacks and things like that. We think that this particular plan that the board just reviewed on last Thursday fits within the existing PUD. If for some reason there was a setback or a lot coverage issue or those type of things, we would come back to the Planning and Zoning Commission, because density is what drives affordability, right? The more units we can put inside that 9 acres, in theory, the lower the price point. Is that what you're getting at?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Yep, so we do have a PUD currently. We think this fits within completely in the PUD, but we have to go back and do some of the more analytical work, I'll say, measurement of setbacks and whatnot. This is a conceptual one. It's dimensionally accurate, but there's still a bunch of details to get through. Yeah, that's a good question. Okay. A lot of this stuff, and again, I'm picking on Councilmember Miller because I know she has this stuff off the top of her head, but there's so much of this stuff that we've heard before, like the housing unit prices in that time period grew 180%. You can see how the housing prices grows up, population is going up, all of that puts demand on it. Employers are having a hard time recruiting and retaining the workforce. I'll speak for myself. When I'm hiring young engineers who get paid pretty darn well in this day and age because they're hard to find, one of the things I hear them say is, gosh, this is really cool. Coeur d'Alene's an awesome place to live, but I can live in Spokane, make the same amount of money, and it's cheaper for me to buy a home there. Or I'm going to have to live in Rathdrum and commute into work. Is that okay? Those are discussions I have with folks that I'm hiring. We heard those same things from employers we were out talking to as part of this study. So we know that housing impacts the economy. We also know that there's still a booming economy here, because you can see the growth that the economy has been experiencing. But this is the one that just really has struck me, is that the wages have gone up by 63%, but the housing has gone up 181%. And when you boil it down, in 2014, it took 23% of your income. Now it takes 41% of your income. And I think the bankers will tell you, don't use more than 30% of your income for housing. And again, Kiki has this stuff inside and out, but these are all the things that the board was using as input to make sure that they were making a good decision on considering putting attainable housing in this site. This is another one that just fascinated me. It's about the job in migration and out migration. And the reason it just strikes me is because we feel it every day. As we lived here, yes, the traffic is getting worse, congestion is getting worse, despite Todd and Chris' best efforts. The signal timing has been a wonderful thing, by the way. But there's still congestion that's occurring in our community, and some of that is just the migration. There's only 8,000 people in this study that live in Coeur d'Alene and work in Coeur d'Alene. 11,000 of them are getting in their car and driving out, which creates congestion. 17,000 are coming from their home and driving in, which creates congestion. That's part of the workforce that is doing, my employees themselves are commuting in from Rathdrum to come to work in my office in downtown Coeur d'Alene. And attainable housing would hopefully mitigate that. It's a small step in that direction. The demographic that we're aiming for, this is a discussion I've had a number of times with former Mayor Widmeyer, because he and I talk about this a fair amount. This is the group that Atlas is really attempting to target, was this kind of middle income group here. And you can see that, there's the teachers, the radiologist technician, the nurse, and the firefighter. Those are the folks that we hope to target. And these are the product types here that I described to you earlier that we believe can be accomplished in the neighborhood here. And so that is the summary. And before I turn it back over to Will, I'm glad to take any questions or?
Yeah, I just wanted to interject something, Phil, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
I feel great presentation on the attainable housing piece. I feel badly that Councilmember Wood and Gabriel are not here, because I know that they've had questions and voiced concerns and really wanted to learn about that. It's my understanding that there is going to be a separate piece that will be available on just the Atlas Attainable Housing Project that will incorporate a bunch of these slides as well as other information. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely, yes. And so I alluded to it earlier. One of the things we've been doing is, as I'm kind of talking about building up this fact pattern, the design, the data for the board to make a good decision. The board just looked at this last Thursday, and it was a workshop, so we got the general nod of their head out of the workshop, folks that were there. We'll now boil it down into a board action item that says, here's the master plan, here's the metrics that, I'm sorry to flip through these, here's the metrics that support this type of decision-making, here's the financial impact of that decision-making, is there an action item that's coming out of it? And then that information will eventually end up on the board's website, perhaps its own separate website. There'll be a communication strategy that we intend to go out and communicate with key stakeholders, certainly talking about to the builder community. There'll be a process, an RFP process to select a builder or builders and a long-term affordability manager, I'll call it. So there's quite an effort to follow this one, once there's some formal board action on it.
You can go ahead and ask a question.
I just want to follow up and say thank you to the ad hoc committee. So for council's information, they have spent how many hours?
Hundreds.
Hundreds of hours working on this and meeting with individuals and determining the feasibility of it. And I just want to say thank you, because it's a lot of really strong, solid work behind the scenes to get us to this point.
It has been, and I second that, because we host a lot of those meetings and develop content for it. And I wish Commissioner Meyer was here as well, because he's always, Chris has got a great mind, and he's always very challenging when you're presenting data and making sure that you're kind of looking at all sides of the thought and the issue that you're considering. But there's been a lot of great effort that went into it. This was a big part of it too, is just polling some of the larger property owners out there.
Talk about the homeowners associations.
Another good point. One of the things that the ad hoc committee was worried about is maintaining the quality of the neighborhood. And so in order to address that, we're developing, again, considering board action, we'll finalize new architectural standards and a more robust HOA. And that has very strong enforcement, because as you guys know, when you get this kind of density, sometimes this high density creates HOA-style issues that require enforcement. And the architectural part of it is really key. Our previous architectural standards for the rest of the neighborhood were purposely light-handed, because the board wanted the free market to speak. They didn't want Phil and his architectural consultants to speak. And so that's, we let the free market reign a little bit there, and not being super dictatorial about the architectural requirements. Here, we'll probably be a little bit more dictatorial about the architectural requirements to make sure we don't experience a downgrade from the surrounding neighborhood, if that makes sense.
So my apologies for not being able to make that meeting, but have you guys discussed the fact that with HOAs and attainable housing, how that might kind of contradict each other? Because it seems like attainable housing should kind of be more affordable, obviously.
Yep.
But with HOAs and the rising costs, we sit on the HOA for Atlas right now.
Yep.
And they keep on raising costs. So
Yep.
how does that look?
That is part of the challenge that we've talked about. We haven't quantified it yet, simply because we haven't had a final design to think about. But that's one of the topics that kind of getting into some of the details. Even Pepper Smock pointed out, he says, gosh, Phil, I love your park here. Who has to pay to maintain that? Because it's a private park. And we said, well, if it's available to everyone in the Atlas waterfront development, everyone should be paying for it. And he said to me, that's maybe feasible, but certainly this development couldn't pay for just that park. So we hear what you're saying, Commissioner Metz, and it is one of the thoughts. Plus the snow plowing on the private alleys, that's another cost that gets incurred. All those things get stacked up and part of the consideration if you're looking at the total monthly burden for attainable housing. You can't just look at the mortgage. That's your point.
Right.
Yeah, yes. So yes, it's a consideration. Okay, I'm sorry, I did have one more slide. I want to get to the money part, which is this one. This is a summary, and it's land sales, which this is closed sales and a little bit of projected land sales in both Phase 3 and Area 5A. This is the estimated tax increment over the life of the 2 districts that are still open. And then here's the breakdown of expenses, the park, the infrastructure, the Atlas to River District loan repay, city reimbursement, URD operating costs. And so the net at district closed, if the districts lived to the end, that's the estimated net there. This comes out of the financial model that we're on version 57 of, because we continually update it. And back to, I think, the question the mayor sent me earlier today about seeing the cash flow projection, we can extract a piece out of the financial model and provide that to you, Mayor.
Well, that was a question Christie had, which was the refund of the, she believes there's a pro forma or something that says there's a schedule that you're going to pay the city.
Yeah, I don't think that there's an agreement, but we have this example that shows when they can be paid off.
Right.
The annual, yeah, and so.
I think that was her confusion, was it was
Yeah.
when they could be paid off, and she seemed to think those were actual due dates.
I see, yeah.
So, but this is projection, so this is, 2038, when a lot of us will be dead. This is when the district is going to close, and what the final financials, not the current financials.
Correct.
Financials.
It's projections, and,
And that is not indicating that the reimbursement would be in 2038.
right, yep,
Okay.
okay. Any questions for me? Very good, thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
We have a couple of more items on, you're going to finish up. Go ahead, finish up. Sorry.
You're
Jumping
fine.
ahead.
I just want to thank everybody again, and I look forward to working closely with all of you. Obviously, I'm passionate about urban renewal, and I want to find a way to make sure that it's a good partnership with the city as well. We can't do this in a vacuum. And I think at the end of the day, we're just trying to increase the tax revenues for the districts. So unless there's any other questions for me, that's all you.
Yeah, is any questions for Will or Phil or anything else so far? Okay, and now Katie's going to go over some of the financials for the city. Questions were asked about closing districts and what the benefit would be to the city, or what the implication would be, and now Katie's going to go over those numbers. This is some of the stuff that you guys don't have. Apologize for that.
All right, just bear with me here. I'm going to pull up. These were included in the packet, and we have questions every budget season about what the financial impact to the city would be if we were to close a urban renewal district. I know that sometimes that's been looked to, the benefit from closing an urban renewal district has been looked to when budget constraints exist, and so I ran some scenarios if we were to close any of these districts today. And so clearly, it's not a recommendation or anything like that. It's just for the information of council. So there are 2 ways that the city would earn revenue when a urban renewal district closes or, expires and closes. And so the first way would be through ongoing additional property taxes, and that would originate from the increment value folding into the city's taxable properties, and the increment at this point for the health corridor district would result in an additional $257,000, And that's ongoing. So it's quite a small increment, and that sort of lines up with the information that was shared that it is non-taxable, or the property there is Kootenai Health's property, and it's not subject to property taxes. So a small increase is being calculated there. Of course, these are all estimates, and they're based off of some information that we have. We don't have the most up-to-date numbers from the county. That comes out later in the year as we start working on our levy information. So another way that the city would receive money is from the liquid assets that the urban renewal has in that district. And so, of course, any debts would have to be satisfied. And if you look at the Health Corridor District, be about 1.3 million and in liquid assets as of the audit for Ignite. And 42% of that is what would belong to the city. So one-time payout of just over $500,000 when we're looking at the Health Corridor District.
Does that answer your question, Dan? You wanted to know about what would happen if we close that district.
Okay, and moving along to the Atlas District. Now, this one is very concerning for me if we are to look at it as of closing today, because there are some moving pieces here. So as far as the increment, what we would earn for new taxable or new property tax revenues in an ongoing way is $181,000. And so not a lot of increment involved there. If we were looking at the estimates that were presented, I think that there would be quite a bit more we would expect if we saw this district to the end. Liquid assets, 5.85 million, and that largely is borrowed funds from the River District. So this district cannot close until that is paid back. The River District also cannot close until this debt is paid back to the River District. So not a lot of cash on hand there, so very small payout to the city. The other part of it is the loan that was made from the wastewater district. The funds were sent to Ignite in order to purchase property, but there's no legal debt to Ignite or to this Atlas district. And so if we were to close, we would just barely have a little bit to whittle down that debt, and the city would owe $5.72 million to our wastewater fund. So that's important to note that when we close this district, we also need to look at any existing debt that's left over. When we go to the River District, a couple of things that make this unique. First of all, the ongoing revenue from the increment that we'd be looking at is at $836,000. And so that would add to our ongoing property taxes each year, even after the 80% limitation for the increment amount. So that's looking like some good revenue on the horizon. When we look at the liquid assets, so we have 4.325 in either cash or accounts receivable due within due earlier, but the long-term debt, or I'm sorry, excuse me, the long-term accounts receivable is that loan that River made to the Atlas District. And so that needs to be repaid upon closure of the River District. So that would be considered something that would be part of the liquid assets if, when that loan is repaid. The owner participation agreement that Will detailed, that right now, if the district were to close, would be $3.46 million. And there is also that those loans that are due in that district. So we'd be looking at $2.3 million as a one-time payout. Now, when we talk about if we were to close this district today, we also would probably want to look at what we would receive if we were to close the district when the obligations are, excuse me, when, if we want to close the district at the time when the obligations end. So same figures over here, we're talking about closing today over here, and then if we look at, if we were to wait until August 1st of 2028, this is an extremely conservative estimate. As far as the increment, I just increased it 10%. I would expect it to increase more than that, but I didn't want to speculate. So we'd be getting closer to that 1 million in ongoing revenue from the closure. I would expect that to be higher just based on the trends of what's going on in there. And, you know, the building is obviously going to add some more increment. And then we have the liquid assets. So if we, at the time that we close this district, that loan will be repaid. And this is also conservative, just taking the cash on hand plus the loan being repaid and not adding anything else. We would, they'd not be paying any sort of owner participation agreement at closure because the obligations, the agreement says that if we wait, or we wait and close it until 8/1 of 2028, that whatever's remaining does not need to be repaid. So, and then I think as far as the other debt, I just assume that more increment revenue would have come in to satisfy that. So we're seeing quite a bit of a difference as far as the payout if we were to wait. And so the way I look at this too is if we cashed out, took the money here, we'd be looking at, if, you know, we invested it in a CD at current conditions, that'd be about $160-some thousand. And so the difference here is, you know, we're talking about $1.6 million more. So as far as the city's finances and how these potential payouts integrate with that, I would say that, you know, waiting for the additional revenue would be most prudent because we've been running a deficit, and paying back some of that deficit or potentially taking care of some capital projects would be beneficial. And then, you know, when it comes down to this ongoing revenue, that can come in to help with the ongoing deficit for the city. Any questions?
I would just add to that too, that, you know, the 42% that you see there, that's the city's percentage of the revenue that is going to be left over from the district. But what we have done in the past, like when we closed the Lake District, rather than you guys doing capital projects from 42%, we partnered with you to enable you to do capital projects within the district, and then you get the benefit of the whole 100%. So to the extent that there's work that needs to be done from a capital perspective in the River District prior to the closing, that's a partnership that we could, you know, join together and get those projects done and put all of those revenues. So then you're not, you know, then you're doubling that number at least as available funds that can be reinvested in the city and take care of you know, items that need to be done in advance. Like I know that the boathouse for the fire was done that way. The lacrosse intersection was done that way. There's multiple projects that were done and we completed.
I think there were about 10 projects that were completed because of that.
We have a current list of projects that could qualify?
Yeah.
Did
We
you ask,
don't.
do we have one?
We
Yeah, do we
usually
have
follow
it?
your direction.
Yeah, we always get
So
the
the
list
city
from you
hasn't
guys.
given you any list of projects?
Affirmative.
Yeah.
This would be for the River District.
Right.
So we
So
can-
last time it came, so I think Chris sent us a list of projects last time, right? For engineering projects, lacrosse and other, you kind of came. So we always have that direction from you guys.
Okay, well, that would be something that I will go over with Ron then, as to see what kind of list of projects. But the question for council right now regarding the impact to our budget, oh, Dan, did you want to say?
Well, just that I've got to leave in about 5 or 10 minutes, but my impression up to this point is, well, this certainly makes sense to wait. That's not a whole long time, but it also, as we have our different, you know, contracts with the associations and all that, it's nice to know that that's a nice thing in the pipeline. It's not an iffy, whatever kind of a thing, and again, those are conservative, looks very good. I guess I'm back to with that hospital district for me, and if I had to make the call today, I would say, yeah, let's drop that one. The money, one-time money, it's not huge, but we've been sometimes scrambling for 25, 50,000, and then, that's a decent ongoing, and I just feel like that one it's just kind of left, as you can tell, sour taste in my mouth, the whole thing, and I think it'd be better to just be fresh and then do what they're going to do, we do what we're going to do, and then there may be other, there might be other places that make some sense to still look at a different district or something, but anyway, and this isn't decision, but I want to give my reaction, so.
So to ask Ignite then, what is the feasibility of closing the hospital district? How does that impact you?
I think it's a major loss of opportunity for the city and for Ignite, because the pilot program will pay every year more than that one-time payment.
If I may, I would just add to what Will said. I think we would be very short-sighted to close early. I think the district, it's got off on a wonky start with COVID-19 and change in leadership at the hospital, but I personally know Scott and Will and Chris have met with leadership numerous times, and we're going in the right direction. That could really add some substantial benefits to the community. This is not, $500,000 is a significant amount of money, but not in the long run. And I think we would be very short-sighted to close this district now.
And remember, the $500,000 is one-time money. The ongoing would be $257,000. But, and Ron will be meeting with the hospital director soon. So we could wait and see what he has to say with that, and then make a decision at that point in time. It's up to council, really, if you want to give direction.
We're not in a crisis
Remember that
timeline.
they are operating under a contract or a plan that was approved by council. Council can modify the plan if they want to.
Right.
But we want to make sure that we're all on board with that if that's a choice.
Well, I appreciate having this discussion, and that I see at least our local media is here, and maybe it'll generate some public comments or something, so.
But back to the other question on the financial stuff, it is Ron's recommendation, as well as Katie's and mine, to wait on some of this stuff, even though we can get some money now, and it looks really good because it's ongoing, and that will really help our budget problem. But waiting is better. So we can't make a decision here, but next month when we do our financial presentation, if you want to have any input there or offer direction, that would be the time to do it.
Mr. Mayor?
And Kiki has a question.
I always get on the wrong side of the discussion.
You're over there.
I just wanted to throw in that with the hospital district, it's always good to take a look at the numbers and answer questions and concerns about, where should we be going on this. But I think Will put it very eloquently, is that the cities would be walking away from a huge opportunity. I think with Kootenai Health, and one thing that hasn't been answered is what is the potential within that district with solving some of those traffic problems and being able to redevelop that. That is a large potential in an area that healthcare is going to do nothing but grow in this area. It's going to be more and more in demand. So I think shutting the door on an opportunity like that would be a big mistake.
We do, the pilot fees are very important, and if they're not going to, if that's not something that they want to do, that will really impact our decision. Go ahead, Scott.
I agree with all sides there, but we just met with their leadership. One guy, the new CEO, was down there a couple of weeks. Yeah, there's some excuses. You have COVID and all new C-suite and everything. But they have shown their desire to use urban renewal dollars as a tool to help increase jobs. They're rolling out in the next 30 days the start of a whole new master plan for their Coeur d'Alene campus. So waiting for a little bit, I think, would be prudent. But again, I agree. I don't think we should wait forever. If they're not going to commit to doing something, then I don't see any reason to keep the district open.
I think it would be advantageous to have Ignite and the city together with Kootenai just to have those conversations so that everybody's on the same page.
Let's see how the discussions go.
Okay.
Hopefully they're positive and something can come out of it, but otherwise, Dan English does make a very valid concern for the city, and, money's tight and there's an opportunity there, and it's something we need to consider. Are there any other questions or comments before we break off?
Danielle, I don't know if you can clarify this for us, but I believe that if that district were to be closed, it can't be reopened.
I mean, the law's not crystal clear on that. I wouldn't be able to be reopened on the same footprint.
Right, because Post Falls did that in their.
You can cover
in their city
some
center.
area again,
Okay.
but you wouldn't be able to recreate the exact same.
There were several options presented when the hospital approached us regarding an urban rural district. There's still a business improvement district they could do. There's local improvement districts. There are other tools in the tool chest if something needs to be done. So they wouldn't necessarily shut the door on the opportunities for them to use public funds to improve their situation. Okey dokey.
Another little tiny quick question. With Troy's departure, then, we would like to have you recommend a city person to be on the RFP review committee. Oh, yeah. And
The Atlas.
And the Atlas ad hoc committee, where that was Troy was both of them.
A city person, okay. So Troy was the person there. You're not talking, we already have council
We
representation.
have council on there, yes.
Well, I would just throw Renata in it right now without asking her, but no.
Second.
I was just writing down Ron's name.
Let's ask, when Ron's back from Boise, let's ask him, because he is a short-termer, and I don't know what your time frame is. I wouldn't want to have to pull the same thing with you, where we got someone there and then we got someone new. So we'll probably, maybe someone from planning? Does that sound good? Yeah. And then Hillary's out.
Hillary's on it already.
Hillary's on it already, okay.
But
let's-
there's no hurry for that.
No,
Just- that's
yeah,
just-
we'll have a discussion, but I agree with you. Let's get someone on there, so let's bring that up later.
That was not
Yeah.
Anything else? Anyone itching to say anything? Okay, well, then, you can go ahead and carry out your motion then. You're next,
You may move to adjourn?
Yes.
for you guys.
I'll make a move to adjourn the Ignite CDA board meeting. I'll second.
All in favor?
Same thing for us?
Motion carries.
Motion from Kiki,
Second.
second from Amy. All those in favor? All right. Workshop is over. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I would have told you that. I would like to be the first.